Hello my friends, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new video. What we will look at today is how I set up this animated scene, and I will talk you through the process of making it. What I really find interesting about this type of work is that it allows me to create little worlds. A thing I've pictured in my head, I can suddenly visualize and share with others. I guess that goes for most art, but with animation we can really explore that world and tell stories within it. It's quite fascinating, I think. When I started this one, all I knew was that I wanted to build something involving trains. To find an idea for what to make can be tricky, of course, and I think a lot of us are inspired by different things. Perhaps you hear some music, which in your mind translate to some visuals, or you have a strong passion for something that you want to base your art around. Maybe you just saw a great film and want to do something similar to that. It can come from anywhere, I guess. So for this, as I knew train was my focus, I started creating a collection of references. To create a train, I will require references. It would look absolutely terrible and with no design if I didn't use them. I like using Pinterest when it comes to finding good references. Their way of displaying related content to an image is fantastic. A bit of browsing for trains and train stations took me to these images that I collected in a new Pinterest board. These 3 images in particular ended up being what I took most inspiration from. The train is pretty much a straight copy of the one in the reference. Using photographic references to create CG content is very good, as it won't infringe on anyone's copyright. An existing train is fine to use. However, if I copied a train from some animated film or something, someone else's art, and used that as mine, that would be less cool. I spent some time modeling, and pretty quickly I had a simple exterior of a train. I kept adding details to it. As I knew the train would have to move, I made sure the details were there so that I don't have to add anything with painting. If things are static in my shot, I don't bother adding too much details, as that can be painted quickly later, but if it's a moving object, I make sure it's all done within Cinema 4D. Or at least for this type of rigid objects, I should say. Not for everything, like characters I normally do outside of cinema. Here you can see the final train model. It's not very complex in terms of modeling, and for this shot it only needs to look good from a certain angle. So I didn't bother finishing up the rear of it. Moving on to the platform, I first found my camera angle after laying out a few planes and boxes to where things would go. I then added a few details to the house and populated the platform with a few boxes and flower pots. Finding a nice light is one of the most important steps, I would say. And for an outdoor scene, I think a late afternoon sunset suited for this image. So I put my distant light, which represents the sun, up to the top left of the image and let that shine in on different objects so that they cast long shadows. I also have a skylight that illuminates the whole scene and just brightens up the global illumination. The fact that this is in 3D allows me to test a lot of different kinds of lighting setups, and it's very useful. The next step was to add materials to my objects. In 3D this is like coloring things in. So I sit on a library of my own painted textures, and over some time I've managed to paint textures for a lot of different types of materials. I can offset the colors of these and lighten and darken them up to add variety. So if I have a wood texture, for example, It doesn't always have to be the same color of wood for my different projects. So it speeds up my process that I can reuse my textures. When I have assigned them across the different objects in the scene, I rendered it. As you have seen in my previous videos, I'm using Arnold Renderer for this part. Here we are in Photoshop, and this is the somewhat meditative process of just adding details to what we've already made. Since lighting, general composition, and where things are, like all the different placements of objects, have already been decided, it's pretty straightforward to take this to a finished state. But it's also a really fun part of the creation. Painting trees, little cracks in the brick walls, vegetation and flowers are all things that makes this image look more inviting and not so sterile as it looked when it came out of the 3D software. I rendered the train separately with two passes. One Arnold pass, which shows the color and lighting, and one outline pass, which is done with Sketch and Toon. Combining these two makes it look a bit more illustrative and sort of Studio Ghibli style, if I'm allowed to say that, and not sound too self-praising. Once the background was painted, I added a character, a traveler on the station platform. I added the driver to the train in Photoshop. I exported him on transparency as a PNG, then I added that PNG as a texture to a plane that I connected to the train in my 3D file. I rendered him separately, and by doing that, he now animates with the train's motion. I did a similar process for the reflection in the train window. I didn't want to use realistic reflections in 3D, so I made sort of a hard horizon line reflection in After Effects that animates as the train rolls in. That was also rendered separately and finally composited together with all the rest in After Effects. I gave my character on the platform a quick head turn to make her less static. Here's the final animation one more time. So let me know what you thought about this in the comments below. Maybe you're making similar content, so please let me know if this is useful for you. And yeah, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.